Audio on demand from Vision Christian Media.
You're listening to Momentum, a show that helps men succeed in life. And as we delve into this week's topic, a reminder that some of the content may be of a sensitive nature. Now, here's your host, Des Kennedy.
Hi, you're with Momentum again, and we're going to have a great conversation today. And just before we get into the topic, I just want to remind you of our website, momentumaustralia.org. Lots of feedback. You can ask questions. All the podcasts are on there. Really good information on our website. Don't forget our care line. Guys, don't do conversation. Don't do life on your own. Reach out to our care line, 1-800-000-MEN, 1-800-000-636, 7 days a week, 9 a.m. to 11 p.m. And don't forget our YouTube channel. Please share, subscribe, like, comment, because that helps the channel to grow.
Yes.
And this week, Jerry, we have back with us again Dr. John Wenham, and he's originally from Belfast, which is a blessing. That's why he's such a great character.
That's right.
And he then went downhill to Manchester, and now the poor soul is ensconced in Broken Hill in New South Wales, which is I've been to Broken Hill, so I can comment on it. So John's had a great career. He's was in medicine, been a doctor for 21 years. He was in the practice for 7 years before coming out to Broken Hill, and what an amazing journey from Manchester to Broken Hill. Maybe we should do another show just talking about your life story. That would be really cool.
Oh, yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, and so he's involved in flying doctors and did work there, which is amazing as a medical officer. He's been involved in women's health, children's health, in teaching other medical students. Amazing career, and he does a bit of running and cycling and squash and plays a game of golf. Is there a golf course at Broken Hill?
There is. Yeah.
Wow, there you go.
Fully irrigated with reclaimed water.
Oh, there you go. Well, that's good.
I've had my biggest gallery there. Emus and kangaroos.
Oh, right.
Big fans, yeah.
Yeah, well, the only other golf course that's got lots of kangaroos is Royal Canberra Golf Club. It's packed with kangaroos.
It's got grass.
Yes, it does. The other thing I was going to say is that John is a strong Christian man, and that's why he's on the show, because he's had a strong faith all his life. And he worked with Gideons, and we didn't say that in the previous show, but he was involved in Gideons, and he's currently the National Vice President. And all people who don't know, Gideons are the folks who give out Bibles and put them in motels and prisons and hotels. Yeah, all sorts of places. Yeah. Amazing. So one of the things we want to talk, John, today is an area for men, and they don't tend to talk about it, but you and I have had a previous conversation where we did talk about prostate, and I got that right. I've been told off for not saying it right, so prostate.
Good job. Yeah.
Yeah. So John, tell us about how that identifies and how it comes about.
Okay, so prostate concerns a lot of men, and they get a little bit jumpy because they're not really that sure what to look out for. So it's a good starting point. So the prostate is a gland. It's about a walnut-sized gland, and it sits in the kind of U-bend of your tube from your bladder out to the end of your penis. Right. So it sits up behind your testicles in there.
Yeah.
And it normally sits around that size as a walnut. But what happens as we get older, that for most of us, it will get bigger. And most of the time when it gets bigger, it's just benign, which means it's not cancerous, but it starts putting pressure on that tube. So you can imagine you've got a tube going past, and you've got something that's growing to the size of a golf ball maybe, and it starts to have an impingement on the flow of water out from your bladder.
Your urethra.
So, and that leads to pain and discomfort.
Well, pain is the extreme end if it gets really blocked. But the first thing you might notice is something called hesitancy. So when you think, I need to go to the bathroom, and you stand there and it isn't coming as quick as normal, but eventually it comes. That's called hesitancy.
Right.
And then you have flow issues. So I have men come and say, I used to pee like Niagara Falls, but it's really eased off now, doc. So the flow rate tends to slow.
Yeah.
And then you get things like you think you've finished, but actually have a bit of dribbling afterwards, and that's a bit embarrassing.
Yeah.
And the fourth thing that happens is what we all know about is you get up more often at night when you are getting a bit older. And that probably starts in your mid-40s,
Yeah.
50s, So that's because your bladder isn't emptying as well because of this blockage.
Right.
So there's less space for the water to fill up at night.
Makes logical sense. Yeah.
So those are the four things you're looking out for.
Right.
Slow to start, poor flow, bit of dribbling afterwards, and then a nighttime peeing.
Right. And is it any one of those, or do you have to see all of those?
You don't necessarily get a full house. I think probably the nighttime, people notice that it's normal to get up once, maybe twice in the night once you're 50 years old. But if you're getting up more than that,
right,
and it's probably the slowing of the flow, I think, after that.
Right.
So that's the reality. That happens to a lot of us. But then it's how you distinguish that from prostate cancer, which is what people are worried about.
Yes.
And the answer is it's pretty tricky. The symptoms, if you had a cancer growing in your prostate, it's going to be growing from the inside, and eventually it may start to have a pressure effect.
Right. So it will lead to the same side effects. Yeah. So what should men do? Should most men panic and sort of be stressed about them going to the bathroom, or?
Yeah, I think the first thing is if you have symptoms like I described, you should be going and having a chat with your GP.
Yeah.
And we can then advise you which way to jump in terms of testing. The difficult issue is prostate screening. It's been a hot topic since I was a GP trainee. It's still hotly debated whether the screening tool we have is actually something we should be offering on a regular basis. And in fact, the Royal College of GPs in Australia is about to issue new guidance. I saw that last night. So there's a test that men probably know about. They've probably heard about the PSA, which stands for prostate specific antigen. So it's a blood test,
right,
which you can have done. I'm not a big fan, if I'm perfectly honest with you, Des and Jerry, because it's such a tricky thing to navigate. So when we were talking before, I explained to you that if you have 5 men who actually have prostate cancer, this blood test will only pick up 3 or 4 of them.
Right.
It's not. So you're going to miss 1 or 2 in 5.
Wow.
So I could do you the test, and then you go and say, oh, you're normal, you're good to go. And you go, oh, I've not got prostate cancer, but in fact you might. So as you can imagine, it's a typical thing to navigate. The other flip side of that coin is that when you do a screening test in a large population, you will get what we call false positive.
Right.
So someone who doesn't have prostate cancer, you're probably talking 20% of the whole population will get a test that's up, and actually doesn't necessarily mean they've got cancer.
Right. So PSA, what other things would drive up your PSA other than prostate cancer?
Well, inflammation can. So sometimes you get inflammation down there. Cycling, sitting on a bike for a long time because of where people have heard, you can examine the prostate by a rectal examination. So any pressure on that area can put your prostate up. So we try to advise men before you have a test, you won't be doing any of that. You certainly won't be examining their prostate. And that's now no longer recommended in terms of screening. It used to be blood test and a rectal examination, which really put the guys off.
Yes.
And they've shown that that's not.
I've no idea why.
I don't know. Imagine if we had to go and have pap smears like our good ladies do. I don't think we'd be turning up.
No.
Yeah.
Or a mammogram for that matter as well.
Any of those. Any grams.
Yeah. So basically, we recommend. So one thing to be looking out for, if there's a history in your family, so if your brother or father has prostate cancer diagnosed, then you should be going for regular screening. And there are ways around it. So we can track the prostate antigen over time, and that will give us a better idea. So we do a baseline, and then we can see if it just starts tracking upwards
Right.
fairly steeply, then we get more excited. But increasingly, I think we've been moving towards ultrasound scans.
All
So you
right.
can have an ultrasound scan of the prostate, and it will give us an idea of the size of the prostate and if there's any unevenness in the tissue inside.
Right.
So that has been quite, that's a better test, to be honest. If I've got someone who we've got those symptoms in, we'll do that. The gold standard test now is we're talking about high resolution MRI scanning. So if a urologist, so they're the waterworks specialist for men, if they're concerned, they will probably go for an MR scan now.
Right. And it's a lot more accurate?
Very accurate. And the bit I didn't go to was with PSAs being up in the past, you automatically scored a biopsy.
Right.
And a biopsy of your prostate is no mean feat.
So I describe that process.
It's like
well, imagine you had an apple and you got a shotgun and you shot through the apple in 10 different spots. So you got a tunnel of tissue of apple coming out. That's what they do to the prostate to try and see if there's any bad cells in it. But after you've shot an apple 10 times, you've still got quite a bit of apple left.
Yes.
So you could still have missed, if the cancer's hiding in there, you still may have missed it. But the really bad news is that if you have a prostate biopsy, there's quite a high risk of side effects long term. So impotence is one of them, incontinence is one of them. These are not things you want to be doing in a rush. So the gradual move to having a better scans that can give us more reassurance without resorting to that is good news for men.
Wow. I mean, that's really interesting and good information for men to have if they're, in that age group or having some of those side effects, to be aware of that biopsy issue. That's really key. We're going to take a short break and then we're going to come back and talk about what men can do to reduce their risk and what they should do if they find that their PSA is up sky high and what they can do. So we'll be back shortly.
You're listening to Momentum, a show that helps men succeed in life. Find out more at momentumaustralia.org.
If this program has highlighted something you'd like prayer for, we'd love to pray for you. Call 1-800-PRAY-FOR-ME. That's 1-800-772-936. It's a free call. Or text 0401 132 888.
You're listening to Momentum, a show that helps men succeed in life. Find out more at momentumaustralia.org.
Welcome back to Momentum. We have with us Dr. John Wenham. It's great to have you here. And just before the break, we were talking about prostate cancer and the effects of prostate and what it looks like and the biopsy issue, which men should think about in terms of avoiding that if they can have an MRI or other things. So in your life, John, what are the things that men can do? One, to reduce the risk. Two, to minimize the outcomes once they discover they have a prostate problem. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's, one thing we should also say about prostate cancer is a lot of men will die with prostate cancer, but it won't actually be the thing that kills them. So that's quite a reassuring thing. Now, on the other end of that spectrum is that there are some aggressive glandular types of prostate cancer, and those are the ones we're trying to pick up. So, it's really hard to sort of talk about risk factors. Clearly, there's a genetic thing. So, like I said earlier, if your father or brother, one of your brothers has it, then you are definitely at increased risk. I don't think there's any dietary stuff that often you see this stuff from nutritionists saying, get on the pomegranate juice and get on this other juice. And you're like, there's no real evidence that those things will save you from prostate issues.
Yeah.
So I think it's awareness of A, if you've got a family history, and B, that you're getting older, so your risk is going up. And any of those symptoms we talked about earlier that suggest that the prostate is getting bigger. And obviously, I said probably 9 out of 10 is going to be benign. but there's 1 in 10 that it could be a problem. So you shouldn't ignore any changes in your urine symptoms.
So things like exercise, does that have an impact on whether or not you would have prostate problems?
Not as far as I'm aware, Des.
No.
I think it's not like what we were talking about in the previous show about heart disease. There are obvious risk factors you can avoid, but it's more, as I said, an awareness of change.
Yeah. So the men who are listening to the show today and they have, find some of those symptoms, they've gone to their GP. What things would the GP say to them in order to live a normal life or take away stress?
What's the next step for them to take?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So the recommendations from the College of GPs would be that if you present with new symptoms, we should be doing the prostate test.
Right.
It's definitely more useful if someone has symptoms than if it's just a screening test on everybody.
Right.
And then you can track that. So they might say, right, it's borderline. We'll maybe do another blood test in 3 to 6 months and just see which way that's going.
Back to that baseline.
Yeah.
So what would an average PSA be? What's a good PSA?
Well, there's the limits change. The upper limit changes with age, but ballpark 4 is.
Right.
I'm going to get the units wrong, so I think it's 4 micrograms per liter or something.
Yeah.
But we can check that. But yeah, 4 and under, you'd be less worried. If it starts climbing, significantly above 10, people with, advanced cancer, you're going to see much higher PSAs than that. So,
right.
But yeah, if they say the increase, they talk about it in terms of a velocity of change. So
So it could be rising incrementally, but then if it sort of skyrockets, something else is going on.
Exactly. So if you have a level 4 this month and your GP repeats it in 6 months, and it's gone up to 8, then it'd be more interested than if it's just gone up to 5.
Okay. Yeah. So
there's a lot of stuff that we have to keep abreast of to try and work it out. But anyone I would be worried about, I'd be getting an ultrasound scan and I'd be asking a urologist to review them. So
yes.
That's kind of the track, and urologists are the experts in working it out.
So you've been to your doctor, you've got the scans done, they've come back and said, yes, we think you have prostate cancer or prostate problems, enlarged prostate, whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
What things can they do?
Well, in terms of what does treatment look like is...
Yeah.
So
it's obviously surgery. As the last resort.
Yes, and that's another debate. It's hotly debated which way you should go. But the last time I reviewed the evidence, they go for, if you have a prostate cancer, they tend to go for radiotherapy, very localized radiotherapy.
Right.
So you access the prostate and you apply it locally.
Right.
But there is also robotic prostate surgery these days, really high-tech stuff. So they use the scanning imaging, and then they have a robot that will get out the prostate. And basically, it depends on what they will go for a biopsy. They'll work out what the tissue is, and they'll work out what type it is, and then there'll be a whole different raft of treatments to go down depending on which way. Most likely radiotherapy, but it can require a full removal of your prostate, which is called a prostatectomy.
So what is the impact if you lose your
prostate?
How does that affect you physically?
As an older male, it's probably not a major issue. What we didn't discuss earlier is what the prostate does. It produces fluid that helps to lubricate the sperm when they come out, when you ejaculate. So, it's not a disaster to have your prostate taken out, but like I said, with the biopsy risk factors or potential problems, you can end up with impotence having had a full prostatectomy.
Oh, right.
So that can be an issue.
If a man's had a vasectomy, so that eliminates the ejaculation, but it doesn't stop the seminal fluid being made.
Yeah.
Is that man more likely to have prostate issues or less issues?
I'm not aware. I don't think a vasectomy is a risk factor. I'm pretty sure it's not, Jerry, for prostate cancer. I think
so it's just the same.
Yeah.
That's what it's the same, whether you've had a vasectomy or not. Because there'd be many out there that have had a vasectomy.
Sure.
It might be something that they're thinking about. Well, I've had a vasectomy. How does that affect me?
Yeah.
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 Okay,
it's a good question. But I'm pretty sure I've not read that it's an issue. I don't think it is an issue.
So there's no long-term, what you're saying is there's no long-term side effects of, having discovered that you got prostate cancer, other than the fact that if it gets into your lymph nodes.
It can go into lymph nodes. Bone is the issue. If prostate cancer gets quite advanced, it can get into your bones. But they tend to use hormonal treatments as well, and they can be very effective at reducing the spread of prostate cancer. But that kind of advanced prostate cancer is fairly rare. It's got to be an aggressive prostate kind of tumor. But and that's the thing, we're trying to catch it early. It's being aware of symptoms and changes and trying to pick it up early. So
it's the same as the heart then, isn't it? You want to pick up the symptoms early, address it with a specialist, with a doctor, and get it knocked out early.
Yeah. And that's been really good. Just briefly again, give us the 4 symptoms of prostate cancer or prostate problems.
Yeah. So it's usually initiating, so starting to pee becomes more difficult. You'll notice the flow of your water coming out isn't as strong as it used to be. And then you can get some dribbling afterwards. And then the final thing is getting up at night. And I'm saying if you're getting up more than twice a night consistently, it probably means that your bladder's not emptying completely when you go to have your pee before bed. So I think those are things to be looking at.
This has been really useful. I think men will really get benefit from this. Thank you, Dr. John, for your time today. It's been really cool.
Okay,
and just in final words, one of the things that we do say is, guys, your relationship with Jesus is most important. Doesn't matter where your health is. You got to live for eternity. It's important that you get that part of your life right, irrespective of everything else. So we're all on that same page. So, John, thanks so much for your time. It's been really great having this conversation.
Very insightful.
Great to join you. Thank you.
Our pleasure.
You've been listening to Momentum, a show that helps men succeed in life. For more information or to hear this week's show again, go to momentumaustralia.org. You can also access a whole range of resources to help you on your journey and to get in touch with the team at momentumaustralia.org.